So good afternoon or good morning or wherever you are in the world. I would like to introduce you to Jennifer McClure, entrepreneur, keynote speaker, and high performance coach. So welcome, Jennifer.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So Jennifer, firstly, congratulations on all your achievements working with leaders to leverage their influence, increase their impact, and accelerate results. Can you please share with us a little more about that? And your entrepreneurial or how your entrepreneurial journey started?
Sure. I spent about 20 years of my career as a leader and executive in the human resources world, in the corporate world, and then left there after the company that I worked for was sold and went to work as an executive search consultant doing retained search recruiting for a few years for companies looking for leaders and executives. And during that time, got an executive coaching certification from the University of Cincinnati Executive Education Program. So I loved both helping companies find and recruit the right leaders to their organization, as well as coaching leaders in organizations to improve their skills so that they can continue to help their companies grow and achieve. And then in 2010, I stepped out on my own as a full-time professional speaker. So that's what I do today. I speak at conferences, events, or corporate events on the topics of high-impact leadership and talent strategies. So a little bit about, the things that I have done in the past and learned and, helped to hone those skills over the years. So that's most of what I do today is speaking. I do a little bit of coaching still. I may take on a consulting client every now and then, but I really love working with leaders and teaching leaders and helping to bring them along. And during the time frame of having my own business and being a speaker in 2015, along with another gentleman here in the Cincinnati, Ohio area where I live, we started Disrupt HR, which is a global organization where people can give talks and share their ideas about the workplace and the future of work. And now we have over 4,000 of the 5-minute talks out there online. There have been over 300 events held around the world, and there are 154 licensed cities in 34 countries holding Disrupt HR events. So that's kind of what I do today. I'm speaking, I'm working with leaders, and I'm helping to keep the movement of Disrupt HR growing.
No, that's amazing. So as you've become frequently known as a global influencer and expert on the future of work, strategic leadership, and innovative people, strategies can give us. Well, can you give us some background on this and some insights into this?
Sure. I mean, as I said, I kind of enjoy the opportunity to both be a lifelong learner myself, where I'm constantly looking for ways to learn about what some companies are doing in terms of being innovative and uh, implementing maybe new and disruptive strategies in regards to their leadership and the talent that they have in their organization. And then also, using that information as well as certainly reading books and learning from other leaders out there and distilling that into a message that I can share. So I love to really help leaders to see what's possible. But I'm also, very much about the basics. It's like a lot of things in life. I think we often think about what's new, what's next, and we have yet to master what is needed today. And
Yes,
so I think
very true.
in terms of leadership and also, talent strategies for organizations, there's a lot of stuff that we can still improve upon with what needs to be done today. And there are, a few things that we should be thinking about, maybe how we can disrupt them and do them differently in the future.
Absolutely. So that brings me to the next question, also the focus on leadership. So leadership, there is a big focus um, and point of discussion at present. Why do you think there is such a lack of real leadership, and what separates you from others? And what is your definition of leadership, and what do you think you should and can be done differently? So yeah, I don't know if that
Sure.
makes sense.
Well, I think, in terms of leadership, I think people can show leadership at all levels of an organization. Often we think about leaders or leadership being the executive or the owner or people who have many people on the organization chart that report to them. And certainly those people by title and position in the organization are leaders. But I believe leadership is something that each individual can do. Even if you're an individual contributor or you join the company, you can show leadership by often going first or by thinking about setting a plan for the future and then influencing others to join in that plan.
Mm,
And then certainly leadership is getting other people to follow you. So there's, I think, leadership by position, and then there's leadership by action. And those two things can happen in the same person or in different people. So there are people out there, I think, that aren't really doing their part in terms of leadership when they aren't, maybe they are in those positions of leadership and they aren't really leading. In other
no,
words, they aren't looking at what they need to do in order to achieve the goals and objectives of the organization in the future and helping to prepare their team to get what they need in order to accomplish that.
yeah,
Or they're not looking out into the global landscape and saying what is happening out there that could potentially affect the plans that I have for my team or my organization, and how should I be preparing for that. So I think leaders fail when they're not looking at what is happening around them that could prevent their team and themselves from being successful, and then making sure that their team is prepared for that, whether that's getting them the resources that they need or the training that they need. Sometimes it's just encouragement. Sometimes it's appreciation. So,
yeah,
leadership really is a full-time job. You have to constantly be kind of scanning the landscape and seeing what's going on out there. You need to know and understand your people, whether you have one or two people reporting to you or 200 reporting to you.
yeah,
And you need to be making sure constantly that the people that you have are getting what they need in order to succeed.
absolutely. So that leads me to the next question. So you have had decades in the trenches of leadership and executives and working in and with startups. What would you say are some of the biggest challenges with startups, and do you have examples of how you impacted and changed startups?
hmm I think, with startups, whether you're starting up a new company or something new in an organization, often the tendency is to just focus on um, getting the company growing or getting the project growing. And so, it might mean that you say, well, I need to hire certain types of people, but not really thinking about what those people bring to the table and
Yes,
making sure that you are getting the right culture and chemistry fit. And so hiring and getting people on board in a startup situation can often be seen as just a need to do instead of
yes,
really thinking about how critical it is to the ultimate success of where you want to go. So making sure that people are not only bringing to the table the right skills and abilities, but also that they have the right mindset. I think there's a different mindset for people who are starting something up.
yes,
They have to be people who actually love the challenge of that ambiguity and the potential for failure and the fact that we're going to be blazing new trails in a lot of ways. And if you go out and you hire someone who is very successful, maybe in the corporate world where they've had a lot of structure or they've had teams around them to be able to accomplish things, and they're not used to rolling up their sleeves and diving in and dealing with a lot of things that are potentially going to go wrong, then those people often fail. So I think startups often fail because they don't really think about hiring people who maybe both have the skills, but really have that mindset to be able to push through and grow through some of the growth and change that's required in a startup. So in my background, I've had the opportunity to work in several of those situations, and I can think of one in particular where the CEO we needed some marketing support, really, needed to bring people in who could think differently about the product and how to market it. And so in his mind, the people that he wanted to bring on board to do that were from leading consumer brands like a Procter and Gamble or a PepsiCo in the US, companies who teach that kind of classical marketing training and are known for, really being brand organizations and certainly have a lot of great people in there. And so I gave him some pushback on that because I said, yes, those people are talented, but they're also coming out of very huge corporate structures where they're used to having big budgets and big teams, and we don't have those things here yet. And those people probably will not be of the mindset to be able to thrive in this kind of environment. But he was insistent. He wanted to hire, top marketers from top companies. And so we went out and hired several of those, including, the leader of the marketing organization. And ultimately they did all fail, which set us back for a period of time. It wasn't a deal killer overall, but they did fail because they got in and they didn't know what to do when they didn't have the support or the budget to be able to buy their way out of some of the challenges. They weren't excited about, some of solving everyday type problems that you have to solve along the way. So I think that's an example of these were very talented people who were very successful in their own right, but they were not wired for startup and some of the challenges that come with that.
Yeah, it makes sense. And like you said, it's always just because somebody is good in one area, they might be able to bring some level of expertise. But when you're starting up and you've come out of a big organization, it's totally different.
Yeah, vice versa. I mean, any company, we talk a lot about culture today, and any company needs to pay attention to culture.
Yes.
Culture fit. Yes, you want to make sure that you're hiring people who are diverse and bring, different ideas and backgrounds and experiences to the table. But at the same time, you also want to match both where they fit best in terms of how they're wired in your environment. And that's a very important piece that companies all over the world often miss because they look simply at skills and experience and go out to hire qualified people, of which there are often many, instead of really focusing on making sure that we get the most qualified person who is a great fit for the type of environment that we have.
Absolutely. So what would you, so what have been some of your biggest lessons and learnings in your career, and what would you say some of your greatest and most rewarding career highlights have been?
I think, in terms of the things that I've learned along the way, again, that it's a journey. You're never all the way there in terms of leadership because the people that you lead are changing and the way they're wired are changing. The business environment changes. And so you have to constantly be looking to grow as a leader. Who can I learn from? What books can I read? What podcasts can I listen to? When going to conferences and events, am I choosing sessions that are going to feed me as a leader and help me to grow? And I think sometimes, again, people maybe get to a certain point on the organization chart or they get a title and they think, I'm done here. I'm the best I can be. And, this is it. And it really is a constant journey to continue to develop yourself. And I think for me as a leader as well, I 30 plus years of being in the business, I've not always had people reporting to me. I'm self-employed now, but there are lots of ways that I can show leadership out there by helping others to grow, by sharing with them, both things I learn or things that haven't gone well in my career and helping them to see ways that they can take advantage of those things.
Absolutely. So having also gained experience from Fortune 500 companies, how would you say this has helped you and cross-pollinated into your entrepreneurial journey?
Oh, I think everything I've learned along the way, whether it was small companies or large companies, certainly has helped me in what I do today. Some of it is just the experiences that I've had and the failures that I've had. And, it helps me as an entrepreneur to not only know what I want to do or what I believe in doing, but also a lot of times it's who do I need to reach out to. I think the things that I have brought with me along the journey or, my knowledge and my experience, but also my network. And so I don't have all the answers. And so often I do need to reach out to people who are still employed in the corporate world to either give me advice or to be a resource or to help me to connect with something that, I need to do in order to help my own businesses to succeed. So I think for me personally, it's been that kind of um, bag of experiences as well as the people that I've met along the way that are what I use to help kind of fuel the success that I have now and in the future.
Amazing. So you are also recognized as a keynote speaker. Was this something you wanted to do, was this an easy transition for you?
Yeah, I think about 10 years into my career, I was sitting in a training class with a gentleman who was teaching a very kind of dry topic. I had hired him because I didn't want to do the training because it was boring. And he,
Funny that.
yeah, he came in and he actually made it a lot of fun. He had all of our team members engaged and laughing and enjoying training that I had done for years myself that was not that exciting. And so I remember sitting there that day and thinking, this is something that I really would like to do. I do like to teach and to help people grow. And the fact that he's doing it in a way that people are really connecting to the material and also learning and growing was very interesting to me. But he had shared, throughout the training, he used a lot of stories and examples. He had worked 47 years in a large, General Motors automotive manufacturing plant. And so he had a lot of great stories to illustrate, the examples or the points that he was making. So I remember sitting there thinking, well, I've only been in the business world for about 10 years. I probably need to, continue to learn and grow and get some good stories. And then maybe about 20 years into my career, I can think about, doing some sort of training or speaking, that kind of thing. And I'm sure I thought about it for a little while after that, and then I probably forgot about it. And about 20 years into my career, again, it just so happened that the company that I worked for was sold, and I kind of was in the position to be thinking about what was next. And I did go out and start talking with people and kind of, I wasn't thinking about speaking so much as just saying, I just want to start my own business, I guess, as a consultant.
Yeah.
And I talked to a lot of people who really advised me against that because I had never done anything in terms of like business development or marketing, anything, whether let alone myself or my own skills. And so I got a lot of great advice from people that I was not ready to start my own business that did steer me into maybe doing something that would be a little bit more entrepreneurial business development type role as an interim step. And so I did go to work as an executive recruiter. So that was 100% commission. I had to develop my own clients. I had to deliver on the service that I was providing and find the candidates and help recruit them into the organization. So both the company that I chose to work for and the opportunity to understand that business development process for the next 3.5 years was really helpful to ultimately starting my own business. And it just so happened that during that time while I was there working as an executive recruiter, I was also giving away 10% of my time to senior executives in transition to help them with their resumes and their interviewing skills and their networking. And at the time, LinkedIn was relatively new, so I was showing them how to use LinkedIn. And that turned into those same executives when they did become employed or they go back to organizations that they were part of, they invited me to come in and share those things with their teams and their people. And so the speaking actually kind of developed organically from just sharing what I know, helping people. And again, the ultimate goal for me of speaking is to teach others, to share what I know, to help them grow. And so I had started doing that just as an opportunity to give back and to help people. And then that turned into them asking me to come into their organizations to do that same thing. And so after I started doing enough of it that I started saying, well, I'm going to have to get paid because it's taking me away from my day job. And I had enough of that going. I felt like I remembered that I ultimately wanted to be a speaker,
Yes,
and was already doing that, and so had the opportunity to kind of step out on my own and do it full time.
amazing. So, um, obviously, I see you've been a keynote speaker for some big brands and companies. What would you say has been your biggest impact and changes that you have seen through your keynote speaking? And what were some of the biggest highlights within your keynote speaking?
Sure, I think anytime you speak to people, you're trying to affect change. I think it's I heard the quote this last week, but now I don't remember who said it. If you're getting up there to speak and your goal is not to change the world, then why are you doing it? So,
Yeah,
I'm trying to change, whether it's hearts and minds, to do something different or to see the future differently or to, improve upon something that they have. So it's very fulfilling and rewarding when people either come up after, I come off stage, or, send me an email or a message afterwards that say something that I shared help them to see something differently and that they are inspired to make a change. So that's really why I'm in it. I want to affect change and to help people grow and to be the most effective leaders that they can and to do the best work that they can. And so that's kind of what I'm looking for, is that, you know, when someone writes you a recommendation or a testimonial, they don't just say that, hey, Jennifer was great and what she said was great and the whole thing was great. What you want to hear is Jennifer said something that really struck me and caused me to do something differently as a result of hearing that. So, that's the goal for me every time I get up on stage, is to affect change in the lives of the people that are listening, whether that's 10 people in the room or 2,000 people in the room. And so that's something that I don't take lightly. And I think some of the opportunities to be on stages, whether it's again for small events or large corporate events or even big conferences, I really do value that opportunity and see it as a huge honor to be someone who can help lead people along their journey.
that's amazing. So let's touch on your coaching. These days, it seems like um, everybody's a coach or an author, and it's oversaturated and being damaged by those who lack the credentials and experience. How in all this noise do you separate yourself, and what do you feel gives you the differentiating edge over other coaches?
hmm I think whether it's a coach or anything else in the world, people need to vet and understand who they might potentially be working with. And again, a lot of times I think with coaching, it's similar to hiring people into organizations. You need to connect with and match with the person that, you hire as a coach. And so I'm not the right coach for everyone.
Mm,
And if someone reaches out to me about coaching, then we have to do a lot of discovery, I think, on both of our parts. They need to understand what I do and what methods I use and kind of what approach I'm taking. And then I need to understand what they're looking for and what they expect from a coach, maybe what some of their prior experiences are with a coach, and what their goals are for the engagement. And if I'm not the right person for them, my goal is to make sure that I can connect them with the coach that is. So it always starts with a conversation, and I think for any coach out there, they're not writing, whether it's blogging or podcasting or just being active and sharing thoughts on social media or doing something where they're getting kind of their thinking and their thought process out there, then it's going to be very difficult for someone to really assess
yes,
what they're about and how they approach things. So for me, I've been blogging since 2008, both on my site as well as others, and writing for companies. And I'm active on social media, so you can see some of my thoughts and opinions and how I kind of approach things.
yes,
I do have a podcast. So, there's lots of ways I think that people, and maybe I do, someone hears me speak on a stage. And so there's lots of ways that people can hear my approach, my thought processes, my experience and my background, and say, I think Jennifer might be the right coach for me. There are also lots of ways for them to read what I've written or, what I share online or from a stage and say, I agree with what she's saying, but I don't think she'd be the best coach for me. So it really is, I think, the levels that I'm working with, that's usually the senior levels in the organization. You
Yes.
have to really match with the person. You have to really, on both sides, both have the client needs to have goals that I feel like I can help them to achieve, and they need to be realistic. In terms of what separates me from others, again, sometimes it is just that the way I'm wired and the experiences that I've had can be a good match for where they want to go. But I think my skills and experience through the varied things that I've done in my career and the experiences that I've had as a result do bring some unique perspective to the way I coach people, and also the training that I've had. It wasn't just training on how to ask good questions, which I think is what a coach does, but it was really, I'm trained to follow a process through the coaching. So it's not every week, if we're having a call or a meeting, I don't just walk in and say, hey, tell me about what's going on in your world. We're working on something specific, whether it's accountability or the goals that we've set or the action plans that we have in place. And really my role as a coach is not only to ask good questions and to draw out of you what's already within you to get what you want to achieve, but also to hold you accountable to what you've said you need to do and want to do in order to achieve those. And so I think I do bring that to the table.
Well, it's amazing. You've got incredible insights and obviously a lot of years of experience. So in your keynote programs and workshops, you share a blend of research, best practices. Can you elaborate on this?
Sure. I think any speaker, as I mentioned, even with the gentleman that I heard, early on in my career, is bringing in real life examples. So sometimes my stories or the examples that I share are from my own experience, my own background, but I'm also constantly kind of scanning the environment for case studies that I can share, whether that's, research from other companies or published research from organizations. And then I'm always looking for, whether it's, just keeping an eye on social media or through the relationships that I have when people share success stories of something that they've done in their organization or something that they've done as a leader, or if they share a failure story. I'm attuned to kind of be looking for those because I'd like to be able to share them. If it's a research study, then I share it certainly with attribution. If it's a story that I hear from someone else, I'll reach out to them to learn more about what happened, either to achieve success or what they believe sent them down the wrong path, and then get their permission to be able to share that as an example in something that I'm talking about from stage.
Wow, amazing. So as you work with startups, what would you say as a woman, why do women who are looking for funding have such a struggle, and why do you believe as a woman what we can do to improve our chances of funding?
Sure, I think some of it is, certainly cultural, and that's going to depend on where you are in the world. But in most cultures in the world, women are still relatively new to the workplace in terms of founding companies or starting companies or leading companies, which is, unfortunate. But so there are still a lot of people out there that maybe have difficulties, viewing women as competent leaders or business owners or startup pioneers. And I think that's changing over time, because we see more and more success stories and examples. And for any woman in, kind of entering into that, I think, first of all, it's like any man as well. They may think, wow, I do want to start up a company or be a part of a startup. And they might get into it and realize that it's not what they thought it would be. So for someone who's seeking funding or investment, I think it's like anything else in the world. You have to be able to show and demonstrate a proven track record,
Yes.
either of being an expert in the idea or the product that you're trying to push forward, or an expert in kind of growing and pushing through some of the challenges and the difficulties that, typical startups face. So if you're seeking funding for women, first of all, again, it's about relationships in general for both women and men. In order to get in front of the right people who potentially have funds to invest, you more often than not need to know people in order to get the introductions to be in that meeting. And I
Yes.
think for women, um, thinking about and cultivating relationships with men in the business professional sense, to be able to both get access to those meetings and then also to be seen as someone who is credible once you get in the meetings is really important. I had some great advice when I was networking in between the corporate world and going into executive recruiting. One of the things that I was doing was kind of targeting senior women leaders to meet with them, to learn from them. And then I would also ask them kind of where should I be networking and what should I be learning. And one of those women leaders said, Jennifer, because I was saying, what are other women's leadership events or conferences that I should be looking at? And she said, Jennifer, you need to be looking at what are the events where the men will be, because this is an old boys network,
Yes,
and
very much so.
you will not be able to succeed if you're not out there developing relationships with the business men that you need to have relationships in order to succeed. And I think that was great advice. She was very successful, had started her own business, and to really call out that yes, it's wonderful to network and build relationships with other successful women leaders, and they can and do teach me much, but I also need to have successful men in my network, because often they have the connections that I will need in order to get in front of the right people. And so I think for women, cultivating a broad and diverse network of people is really important, and to have mentors who are not only successful women, but successful men, so that you can get those introductions. And then when you are in front of those people, it is often about who you know. You may have a
Yes.
great product or an idea, but what you need are 3 or 4 people that someone who has the money or the funds to give you knows and trusts, who is there advocating for you. So it's really important, I think, to focus on that relationship building in order to get the opportunity to pitch your ideas to the right people.
Okay, no, that's excellent advice, because I think that's something a lot of women do definitely struggle with.
Mhm.
So I want to touch on sexual harassment in a day and age, or in this day and age. We have very powerful social media platforms. Why is it that you think that men in powerful roles use their positions of power and still behave in such a manner? And what would your advice be to women who experience this?
Sure, I think this is not something new. Power can corrupt.
Yes,
So for since the beginning of humans, I think people in positions of power can use it for good or evil, and some use it for evil. So with social media and the opportunity for people to have a platform now, we hear about it more, but it's been going on since the beginning of time. And so certainly I think women have to navigate a lot of challenges in the workplaces, because again, they are dealing often with men who are in positions of power, who are used to not being told no, who are used to getting what they want. Um, and they have never been told, or, it's never affected them negatively in the past. And so I think for a lot of those men, there is a wake-up call, and that now people do have a voice and a platform to be able to expose that activity. And they've either seen it exposed by other people, or maybe have been exposed themselves or are in risk of doing so. I don't, that won't stop it. It will always happen. And so I think for women in the workplace, again, it goes back to, are you out there seeking to build relationships with people that you can trust? Because when those things happen, it will be important that you have people who are also powerful, who can and have your back, who
yes,
believe in you, who believe you. And so it goes back to, I think, building that base of network. Now, certainly through that process, any woman or even any young person or potentially vulnerable person is going to come across people in power who try to take advantage of them. And sometimes I think you just have to stand up for yourself and what you believe in, and not think I need to take this or to accept this in order to get what I want.
yeah.
You need to know early on what you're willing to do and what you're not willing to do to get what you want, and then you should stick by that. And then tried to, usually people who are in positions of power who are doing things that aren't above board, they often have reputations out there. I mean, every person that's been exposed in the media that's a high profile person, there are numerous people who have had experiences with them, and the talk has maybe not reached the public in the past, but there are people in their area and in their network and in their industry often that know them and they have a reputation. So I think in those cases it's wise to avoid those people.
Yes.
And if they are at the very top of where you want to go, and ultimately you're not going to be able to avoid them, I think you need to understand that going into the situation. If you feel like you need to move forward and use their access or their power to get what you want, and you need to be prepared to deal with, what might come your way. Again, there are ways, I think, to potentially address some of the issues that might come up, but at the end of the day, you have to trust your own gut. You have to know who you are. You have to believe in your worth. And I think you have to know going into those situations that if something comes up where someone questions you or tells you that you need to do something in order to get what you want, what you will and will not do before you get in those situations.
No, absolutely. That's great advice. So, Jennifer, you also Chief Excitement Officer for Disrupt HR. I love this title. How did it come about, and can you give us some background on this?
Sure. We started Disrupt HR here in Cincinnati, Ohio in December 2013. I had met a young man who had started up a HR technology company here in the Cincinnati area, and I met him early in the process, and he was out doing what we've talked about in this discussion, kind of building relationships and seeking out mentors and advisors. He was not from the human resources industry, but he had an idea that he felt like could help with employee engagement and retention, both mainly from his experiences as an employee. So I had met him and he asked if I would be an advisor for him and his company. And I agreed to do that. And so we would meet a few times a year just to kind of both hear what was new in his world. And he's also very good about, kind of asking me what was happening for me or how he could potentially help me. And so in one of those meetings, we got to the point where he asked about what was new for me or what I was thinking about. And I shared with him, that I do speak at a lot of conferences and events, a lot of HR and recruiting conferences and events. And because I'm at, 30, 40, 50 of those a year, I see a lot of the same speakers, including myself, giving talks around the same topic. And while that's great for the one person in that state or that community who is not hearing it 49 other times around the world, I felt like there was an opportunity out there to have an event where people would share different ideas, things that may never get on main conference stages, and people who would maybe never be invited to speak on a big conference stage or never want to. And so I was just kind of thinking about doing something like that in my own city at some point in the future. And again, he's an idea guy, an entrepreneur, a startup guy, and he loved the idea and kind of left that lunch meeting and kept thinking about it and reached back out to me. And at the time, he was the community organizer for Ignite events in the Cincinnati area. And so Ignite talks are done all over the world. They're 5 minutes with 20 slides that automatically advance every 15 seconds. And typically at Ignite events are people from the community giving a talk about something that they're passionate about. So he kind of put the idea together. Why don't we do what you're talking about, have something in the space related to the world of work and talent and recruiting, and use that Ignite format and kind of, bring people in from the community and offer them the opportunity to give those talks and share their ideas. So sounded great to me. So we held our first event in Cincinnati, as I said, in December 2013, never thinking that it would be anything beyond maybe something that we did in Cincinnati. And I invited a friend of mine who was in the area visiting from Denver, Colorado, and asked if she would come to the event. And she did, and she enjoyed it. And she ask us if she could do the same thing in her city. And so we helped her with that. And then I believe we put the videos from the two events online, and a friend of mine from Toronto saw the videos and said, that looks like fun. Can we do that here? And so just one by one, we started having people from around the world reach out to us that were either in our networks or who saw some of the videos out there and asked if they could do it in their town. So after about a year and a half, I think we had a dozen or so cities around the world, and Chris and I said, we probably should form a partnership and build out the website and allow more people to have the opportunity to do this. So when we filled out the